Frank, hey, how's it going today?
Hey, good man. Hey, Armin, last night I was grilling out and my neighbor's giving me a lot of grief because I had a bunch of beef on the grill. What's up with that?
You know what, Frank? That's interesting. We're going to talk about beef today, so there's a lot to know. We'll talk about that.
Awesome.
Hey, Arman here. Welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show, where we cover training, nutrition, supplementation strategies, and a whole lot more. So stand by. Hey, and welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Arman Eckelbarger.
And I'm Frank Mills, and hey, we have another jam-packed show for you today. Armin and I will be talking about how to organize your split routines and also what you need to know about eating beef. So that being said, let's dig right in, Armin. Hey, beautiful day in Tampa Bay, sun's out,
Yep,
and today is another workout today for me, chest and back today.
good.
So how about you?
I trained my back this morning, so I'm feeling good. Backs are it's a tough workout, but ready to go.
All right. So let's get right into this. How you organize split routines. Let's start by explaining what are split routines. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. So to get some clarity about it, what we're talking about here is how to split up muscle groups that you're going to be training, and
Hmm.
that's really what you're talking about. And so some examples of that is instead of just training your whole body, which is one way to go about it, you can just train
Okay.
your whole body several times a week, or you can train upper body one day, lower body the next day, take a day off, and then repeat. So that breaks up some more muscle groups. And then you can take it even further. So one day you may do your back and chest, and then the next day you're going to do your legs, and the next day you'll do your shoulders and arms, take a day off, or just repeat the cycle. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about split routines, is splitting up the muscle groups to be able to get more work and more volume to those muscle groups.
Gotcha. Okay. So that being said, what are some things that we should keep in mind when trying to decide on how to create a split routine?
Yeah. So the one thing you really got to do is decide on how many days a week that you want to commit to training.
Okay.
And so based on that is what you would normally do to determine how you want to split up your muscle groups.
Hmm.
So for example, if you feel like I'm just going to train 3 days a week and that's it. So let's use an example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Then, depending on what level you're at, you may want to just do a full body on Monday and Wednesday
Hmm.
and Friday, a full body workout. So then you just decide, okay, what exercises you want to use to complete that full body. All right. So now another thing would be is if, all right, I don't really, I get a little too tired when I do a full body, and I
Hmm.
find it takes me longer, and most likely because of the amount of exercises that you want to include to develop the muscles the way you'd like. So
Okay.
then you would look at, okay, so I'm going to split this up so I have more energy from a different body parts. So I'm going to do upper body on day one, lower body on day two. And then you'll be able to add in more exercises. So the other thing to keep in mind here is how long you're going to train for as far as your time.
Okay.
So that's the other thing you keep in mind too, so that you can allocate the number of exercises you want to get done in the time period that you're going to be training.
Hmm.
So as you continue though, then you can also split up the muscle groups further. And a lot of times what people do when they split up the muscle groups, besides, upper body and lower body, is to do a push-pull strategy.
All right, Armin. So what do you mean by the push-pull strategy?
Okay, so this is pretty common with approaches to working your muscle groups.
Hmm.
And so what this means is one day you'll be focusing on, or actually there's different combinations to do this, but the
Okay.
pushing exercises, which would be one focus, is like your chest, your shoulders, your triceps, your quadriceps, and your calves. You're pushing the weight. So
Okay.
that's one component. And then the pull strategy is how you want to combine those pushing movements with the pulling movements. And so the pulling movements are obviously going to be working your back, your biceps, your hamstrings, and forearms where you're pulling the weight. So when we talk about a push-pull strategy, what you can approach it a lot of ways. One day can just be all pushing. So that would be an example of, you know, chest, shoulders, and triceps.
Okay.
Then the next day would be pulling. Okay, so that would be back and biceps. And then the third day would be your legs combining push pull. So you'd be doing your quads and your hamstrings and your calves. So you're going to combine them as a strategy.
Okay.
So
So,
another way to look at that though
uh-huh.
would be to have a push pull where you're doing your back and your chest. So you're
Okay.
pulling and then you do pushing, and there's different ways to combine those. So kind of give you a breakdown of that.
Okay. All right. So I guess the hardest part for me to figure out how would you determine the combinations to use?
All right, so that's a really good question, and there's always going to be a lot of debate on this because
Mm-hmm.
everybody has different preferences.
Right.
And so, with that being said, I would say none of them are perfect. None of them are like, this is the only thing that works. You can experiment to see how you respond.
Right.
And
Right.
so, some guys like to do the chest and the triceps, or some guys like to do chest and biceps because they're pushing and then they go to pulling with the biceps. And so the strategy behind the chest and the triceps or the chest and the biceps is you have a large muscle group that you're utilizing, which also affects the other muscle group. Like when you're doing chest work, you're going to affect your triceps.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get done with your chest workout, you just finish up further exhausting the triceps. If you do the
Gotcha.
chest workout, which is a larger muscle group, then you go to biceps, then you're going to combine the pushing and the pulling.
Mm-hmm.
And they can both be effective. So that's one thing you want to kind of keep in mind. Now,
Right.
my
Right.
favorites have been, I always like to do back and chest because I'm pushing and pulling, and you get a really good pump when you do those combinations. So I like to alternate a back exercise with a chest exercise is one thing, or even superset those together.
Okay.
So as you can tell, there's a lot of combinations. And then some days I'll just do all back exercises, and I'll finish up with chest exercises. And then other days I'll flip it around. So as you can tell, there's a lot of ways you can do these combinations. Um, and the thing is when you're doing them though, as you're putting a combination together, I believe your focus though, in all instances, should be to work the weaker muscle groups, the ones that
Hmm.
aren't developing the way you would like to get overall complete development. Because everybody can psych themselves up to train their chest and their arms. That's really not a problem. But sometimes understanding how to train the back and going through the pain and the work of training the back and the same thing for legs aren't as necessary as exciting as doing the other. But if you want to have a complete physique, then I would prioritize the weaker areas so
Okay.
that you can bring them up because that's when your energy is the best and you have a fresh central nervous system to really engage the movement. And then always finish up with the ones that you're pretty strong on because you're going to always figure out a way to keep your game up with those. That's kind of what I've seen working for
Mm-hmm.
myself and my clients.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of different ones that you've done, so you don't really stick with the same split routine all the time. Do you change it up a bit?
Yeah, I recommend that for anybody.
Okay.
Again, like I mentioned, I've done all types of split routines,
Right.
and I've actually gotten good results from all of them. And again, we're talking about some of the different ones,
Mm-hmm.
but the ones I liked a lot was like doing the back and chest or chest and back one day, then doing legs one day, and doing shoulders and arms.
Right. Right.
So because that's a push pull combination as well. So I got a lot out of those types of routines. But then I started, as you get more developed, you're going to find that you're you're starting to level out, okay? Because you're doing as much work as you can in that given amount of time. And again, I like to keep my workouts around 45 minutes. So what ends up happening is you start to level out, and so then you want to break out your muscle groups a little further, and so that because may need more recovery as well. So combination would be. Um, So instead of doing back and chest, I'm like, all right, I want to focus on my chest a lot more, which is something I've been doing. So what I do currently is I either train the chest by itself to give it a lot of attention for 45 minutes, or I'll do chest and triceps. And
Okay.
that's all I'm going to focus on. I'm going to work them both really hard for 45 minutes, and then I'm going to rest. And then the next day I'll go to the next uh, body part. And so typically after that, to let my chest and triceps recover, then I go
Mm-hmm.
do back exercises. And I like to go right into that because, the biceps and that's a pulling strategy. So I have pretty good freshness when I'm training. And I think when people start to do these things, they're going to see much better recovery and also better stimulation. But with that being said, I want to make sure I'm changing things periodically, and that's mostly to keep it fresh. All right, and then see how the body's responding.
Hmm.
Like the current routine I'm doing now, and I've been training for close to 40 years. So again, my focus is to work my legs and my calves. They're in my opinion, the weakest muscle groups, period.
Hmm.
So on Monday or the first day of the week of training, I'm going to train quads and calves. So you notice I'm not doing hamstrings. I'm just doing
Right.
quads and calves, and I'm working really hard for 45 minutes. And then the next day, I'm going to do chest and triceps because that's another area in my chest is what I want to work on. So I'm going to focus on that, and I'm doing triceps because of, I can hit those pretty quickly. Then I think because of the fatigue I'm getting, I take a day off.
Gotcha.
So then Wednesday will be off in this example, and then Thursday I'm going to work my back. So I should be recovered. I should be, feeling pretty good from everything else. So I have
Right.
good
Right.
energy to train my back, and I'll just do different combinations of exercises for that. Then the next day, since I did my quads on Monday, I'll go to hamstrings and calves. So I can work my calves again and also work the back part of my legs and give them a lot of focus for 45 minutes.
Hmm.
So this is one way to help increase intensity on a muscle group that you want to give more work to.
Right.
And then
Right.
I'll the next day, since I've done everything else, I'm going to do my shoulders and biceps. So I've been doing this routine now for almost a year, and I've been getting really good results from it.
Hmm.
Now, with that being said, on that, there are
Hmm.
times when I also will break it out even further because some days I like to train my arms just by themselves and my shoulders by themselves. So the way that would work is I'll do the quads and calves day one, chest by itself, day two, back by itself, three, hamstrings and calves, day four, maybe take a day off, then shoulders by themselves, and then take a day, and then the next day, just train arms by themselves. So that's a six
Right.
day type of routine, but I'm getting a lot of recovery in between there. So in this
Okay.
scenario, and both scenarios I'm talking about, I'm only training one muscle group once a week. And I found that the recovery on that has been pretty good, and I'm still making progress. It's
Hmm.
kind of a long winded, Frank, and I just want to kind of throw
No,
that out
no,
there.
it's a lot of good information, and how that you break it down. But I, I guess as you were talking, the one thing I started thinking is how often should someone try to consider staying on a specific split routine? I mean, you went through a lot of variations there.
Yeah. Now that's another one. It's kind of a moving target.
Okay.
So, having a good coach can help with that. Other than that, you can just continue to experiment. I typically like to stay on them until I see the weaker body part and improving. And if I'm not seeing that improve, then I'm going to reevaluate what I'm doing with the whole spectrum of the training and change it up again.
Hmm.
And that could be different things involved with that. But, you know, when it comes to the training and you're trying to figure out how you want to do your workouts, to me, you want to strive for complete development so that and that's just how I approach it. And that's why bodybuilding is called bodybuilding. And there's, other ways you can say it, but I want everything to look nice and even and well balanced. So that's what I strive for. So
Hmm.
I kind of like the saying, perfection is the goal, but only excellence will be tolerated. So
Hmm.
that's what I'm basing a lot of my stuff on to say, okay, how can I get to where I want to be and get these weaker body parts to look better, or to get them up to par with the ones that basically I enjoy working out a lot.
Right.
For example,
Right.
my calves. My calves are, in my opinion, a nightmare. I train them all kinds of ways, and I've tried different combinations, and I'm still doing that. Still hoping that I can find other combinations that'll stimulate them. I've made progress. Don't get me
Hmm.
wrong. It's just not the same progress as I've got with my arms and my shoulders and my chest. So,
Right. Right.
and the same in my quads. I would like them to be bigger, and it's a grind. But I am prioritizing them to try to get better development from them, and I feel like it's working. It's just you got to keep experimenting.
And to get the results that you're looking for, and you actually mentioned you have very high expectations. How do you get there, Armin? I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces just besides working out, right?
Well, exactly. So, you got to remember this, the results or what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time for muscle to grow. So along with good nutrition, which you got to have that too. So it's not just the training by itself. You got to have great nutrition. You got to have great fuel to get the body to recover. The supplements will help, and it helps to give you a little more edge. And there's different ways it does that. And then recovery along with hormone optimization. So when you do resistance training, your hormones are going to balance out a lot easier. So that's kind of
Right.
a given, as long as you're getting the right nutrition to help those hormones, which is proteins and fats. So that's your key ingredient for your hormones and also for your recovery, because that's what builds muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I feel like my training is not affecting the areas I need within like a 4 to 6 week period, then I'm going to reevaluate and say, okay, what do I want to change up? What else can I do on especially my split routines,
Right.
and then try another combination. Now, I read where Vince, what he would do to experiment with a totally different exercise, just an exercise by itself, he would do that exercise for up to 9 months to make sure he gave it all he could to see how it benefited him. And Vince was not a big fan of working single limb exercises like one arm rows and doing things with one arm at a time. He
Mm-hmm.
always liked doing, uh, just using both limbs to do the movements because of his experimentation. But I still feel like that might be too long to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, and plus you have a lot of other resources that you can use to see things happen. So obviously I think things have changed. So, but that's just another way to take it to an extreme. So you can do it in a short period of time. I like 4 to 6 weeks. And if things are working, I'm going to stick with it for a little bit longer. But I will kind of rotate the different combinations of exercises in my push pull to see if that'll give me some different stimulation as well. Because what I've learned is as we get more developed, you're only going to develop some muscle areas as much as you can, but then there's other areas that are still you're able to develop to get a full round development of the muscle. So that's where you have to change up exercises to find those other areas that aren't developed as well to bring it up to even more balance. And that takes some time and knowledge as well.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, a lot of people are going to have questions about information. So, exactly what are some of the resources that our audience can go to and maybe help them out with this?
Well, I really like the Wild Physique.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of different approaches, different things.
Mm-hmm.
That book's pretty complete. But the Blueprint for a Bodybuilder is very complete, even though it was written a long time ago. He was pretty cutting edge with that. Then you have the Vince Gironda Files. A Muscle Has Four Sides is that's a more
Right.
advanced strategy, and then the workout bulletins. Then you also have the 21-day challenge, which is a good starting type of program. It's going to challenge you really well and kind of get you conditioned. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have Vince's Gym. So there's some different preset programs in there that you do for like several months at a time, and you rotate to another one. So like you can do 8x8, 6x6, maximum definition, the bulking programs. That's also very beneficial and pretty affordable.
Well, a lot of great information, Armin, on split routines and basically how to implement them and how to have some success out of them. Uh, a great segment. So, great job.
Okay.
All
I
right.
hope somebody
So,
got some takeaways on that. Yeah.
right, right. Well, we appreciate you joining us here on the NSP Nutrition Show. We're going to take a quick break. You'll hear a message from NSP Nutrition, and you might want to check out nspnutrition.com. The hoodies are out for winter. It's going to be cold. I was looking at a blue one. I'm going to check one of those out. I think I'm going to have to get one of those, but make sure you check out NSP Nutrition. And Arm and I will be right back.
Hey, welcome back to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Arman and
And I am Frank Mills, and we appreciate you being here with us at the NSP Nutrition Show. As we did in our little opening there, what we need to know about beef is pretty important. I don't know anybody who really doesn't like a burger in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Steak. There's a lot of good stuff about beef, but I didn't know there was quite a controversy out there until my neighbor, hey, dude, don't you know beef is bad for you? I have
Yeah.
a hard time with that. So, you know, Armin, what made you decide to talk about this topic today, other than my neighbor and the grilling?
Well, Frank, we do the NSP, the Frank Mills Reality Fitness Show, and we read different articles that are published in the media, and it's just consistently putting beef down as, if you want to live longer, don't eat beef because it's just
Right.
it's so bad for you. I mean, and so for me, it was mostly I'm just really tired of what the media is saying regarding beef. It's bad for people. They act like if you eat beef, you're eating poison, which is kind of ridiculous because man has survived on beef and other game meats
Right.
for
Right.
forever. So where they're coming from, and I can kind of understand, but at the same time, you shouldn't be afraid to eat beef. It's got great nutritional value to it.
Absolutely. And, you and I have talked about this multiple times. You're right, on our other show, Frank Mills Reality Fitness. If you're interested in that, it's available on your favorite podcast app. And we also have some shows on YouTube as well. But, we've dug deep in extensive conversation about protein and why it's
Mm.
so important. But, there is some beef out there that maybe isn't good for you, some that is. So, is all beef really good for you, or are there some out there that you have to watch out for?
All right, well, that is a good question, and that's a good point. So, no, not all beef is good for you. So let's just get that on the table. So there is some correct information regarding beef. So
Okay.
that's why we want to talk about it today. I mean, um, just because it's beef and it's packaged and it's clean doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you either. But that comes with everything else out there.
Right.
So and that's why we want to talk about this is, if you're going to eat beef, we're going to give you some ideas on a better approach.
Absolutely. So, why don't we dig a little bit kind of deeper on what we should look out for? So, when you were talking about there are certain types of beef that are not good for you, tell us a little bit about what that means.
All right, so if you typical beef that people buy, if it's not organic and grass fed,
Hmm.
the challenge you're going to have is they're given hormones, and it's it's to help make the cows bigger, but it also is a negative. So you really don't want to have beef that has been fed hormones, and on top of that, the antibiotics,
Right. Right.
because that's going to be absorbed into the meat, and that's going to be absorbed into your system when you eat it. And also, you don't want corn fed and these other uh, food sources given to the beef because grass-fed beef is basically a lot less cholesterol, a lot less fat. It's just
Right.
like wild game. It has a lot less cholesterol, a lot less fat. So you know, bottom line is yes, some beef is not bad for you. That's what we're going to talk about, and just keep that in mind.
So that being said, Armin, it's kind of interesting because when you and I talked about some nutritional changes, for me,
Hmm.
I changed to grass-fed butter, and I noticed a tremendous difference not only in flavor but quality. So I can speak
Yeah,
of that. But so you're saying just like the butter, organic grass-fed beef is better. So why don't you explain why?
a good point. So, and I want to emphasize this: it does make a difference, and I want to encourage people to take that step to buy organic grass-fed beef. Get it from a local farmer. Help out a local farmer. I
Right.
mean, it's so much better for you. Okay. But what you're going to get with grass-fed beef is a lot of additional nutritional benefits because what people do not understand about grass-fed beef is when the cows eat grass, what they get from that also, as far as besides nutrition,
Okay.
is conjugated linoleic acid. And conjugated linoleic acid is an automatic fat emulsifier. So it's going to help to burn fat as you eat it right away. and that's a great thing. And you can buy CLA on its own as a supplement on top of that. But if you eat grass-fed beef, you don't have to because it's already built into it. And then the other thing is it has 40% less cholesterol.
Okay.
So if you're somebody that's concerned about the steak and egg diet and you're worried about cholesterol, well, obviously go with grass-fed beef. It's a much better fit, and it tastes great. So and then you just have to pick out how you want, how you prefer to eat your beef. If you're going to have it, ground or with a hamburger, or you're going to have the steak and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But also, grass-fed beef is higher in antioxidants. For example, of that it has high beta carotene levels, vitamin E, and also a higher ratio of omega-3 fatty acids. Which, how many people talk about omega-3 fatty acids when you eat beef? It is never brought up, but it's in
Right.
there, and that's good. That helps with inflammation. So you're taking in a good food source that's also very protein efficient ratio. It's really high there. It's right next to eggs, so that's a good thing. It's very high in iron, which most people will have a deficiency of that as well, and it does fill you up. Now, I do recommend if you eat a lot of if you eat a lot of beef or more often, then I would suggest, especially if it's steak and more of a complete beef that you're eating. I mean, if it's ground up hamburger, that's one thing, but if it's steak, I do recommend the digestive enzymes to help make sure you break it all down and get the maximum that you want from the nutrition of the beef.
Right. Right. So getting to the cooking, because I was grilling.
Yeah.
What about cooking it? Is there anything that we should be made aware of while you're grilling or frying or broiling or whatever you're going to do to your beef?
Yeah, and then that'll be another one you're going to get a lot of information on, a lot of debate with, so to speak. But I prefer to eat mine and most of my food sources rare or medium rare. I know some people may gag on that, but um, I'm just not a big fan of it being overcooked because
Agree.
it's more tender. I feel it breaks down quicker. I think it's easier for the stomach to break it down. The biggest reason you're even cooking meat in the first place is to help break the carbon bonds down so that you can digest it and also to kill any bacteria. So
Right.
that's the other part of it. Uh, you know, Grass-fed beef cooks about 30% faster than grain-fed beef because it's leaner. Okay, so that's another thing you want to keep in mind. It is going to cook a little faster, which is kind of handy. It helps with your
Right.
cooking processes. But most of the concern comes from when you overcook beef, is that it can have more potential for the carcinogens called heterocyclic amines, which also known as HCAs. So heterocyclic amines is the one thing that most people are concerned about when you overcook it. So just
Okay.
kind of keep that in mind. And the main danger of eating meat rare, which I get, I have people like give me these big eyeballs and I order
Right. Right.
rare. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with it. But the biggest concern is that they want to make sure that they're going to kill all the bacteria so they don't get any, problems with it. And I kind of get that. So as a guideline, if you want to make sure about that and you're being safe, the internal temperature of what you're going to eat, they feel it should be at 145 degrees Fahrenheit to kill off anything that was in the meat. But I just found that I've never really had a problem, and I've been eating rare meat for 40 years. So
Right. Right.
it's a personal preference, but rare or medium rare, that's what I do. And I feel like I ingest the food very well, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a personal call. So it's up to the person, but I just feel like you absorb it better by getting it, not having it overcooked.
A- Absolutely. I used to eat everything well done in my early years, and then when we were out hunting one time with my dad, everything we started to eat only rare or medium rare. And I
Hmm.
noticed the flavor difference immediately.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
is a flavor difference. You get more flavor at that cooking level of the
yeah.
medium rare or rare. So, um, the other thing too, Armin, since red meat is so thick, I know you and I have talked about this because with all the protein, you can have digestive issues. Could I assume that you would recommend digestive enzymes for your protein intake?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, but I think to make sure you're breaking down the protein really well, I would recommend it. Like Vince was really big on it. When he
Okay.
had anybody he put in a nutrition program, he's like, he wanted you to take more hydrochloric acid to help. And that's what helped us break down the protein.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, as he learned more, he threw in the digestive enzymes on top of that, like
Right.
protease.
Right.
That your digestive system makes protease and the digestive enzymes, but if you're eating more, he wanted to make sure you had enough of the right combinations to break it down so you absorb as much of the protein as possible. I
Right.
just think that makes good sense. So I like using them. I think they're very beneficial. I think that if you don't use them, then that's fine. But if you start having any kind of digestive issues, I would certainly recommend you consider that.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to that too, because I know I have mine on order and I can't wait till I get them because, I'm grilling a little bit and, this show might lead to other topics like into chicken and pork and right. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
we just talked about beef today. So,
right.
in conclusion, any final words here on beef?
Yeah, the bottom line is don't be afraid of beef. Uh, you know, do your own research.
Right.
Don't take our word for it. Look it up. But there's plenty of good data that shows that organic beef is a good food source. It's not a negative. Okay. Now,
Right.
if you go buy the cheap stuff, I mean, if you buy regular beef and you put it in the fridge, it might last 2 up to 3 days, in a nutshell. If you buy organic, I'm telling you right now, it'll last 7 to 10 days. And
Wow.
I've already done the experiment. So that tells you something right there. So when you're eating something that goes rancid within 2 or 3 days, and you eat that in your system, probably not a good long-term strategy. So that's
Absolutely.
another thing. So I'm just a big fan of organic meat in general, but don't be afraid of beef. Use the nutritional value of it. It doesn't mean you have to eat it all day long and every day of the week. I mean, I'm not saying you want variety in the first
Right.
place. I'm just saying don't take people like, oh yeah, if you eat beef, you're going to live a shorter lifespan.
Right.
I don't think there's enough research that shows that. I just think it's conjecture. I think it's based on I mean, there are studies that say this, but when you start reading some of these studies, you got to dig a little deeper into how the studies were done.
Right.
So just kind of
Right.
keep that in mind. But in a nutshell, I'm sticking with beef, and I think people should consider it as part of the nutritional program. Maybe if you're concerned, cut it back a little bit, maybe do a little bit less, no problem. But just eating zero beef, I just think that that's not necessary. I think that's ridiculous.
And, even if you are right now eating the other beef, when you make the switch to the organic grass fed beef, I promise you, you're going to taste the difference.
Yeah,
However you cook it, whatever you do to it, I've noticed a tremendous difference in flavor. And you're right, in the refrigerator, normally you got 1 or 2 days if it's the other meat, like
yeah,
or organic. I had in there for the third day. I'm like, oh man, I got to hurry and cook this. And I went and looked at it and went, it's fine. Wow.
yeah.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. All right. So Armin, what are some of the good resources where if somebody has some thoughts about beef that they could go to and take a look?
Well, like from Vince's point of view, like he talks about using beef as part of your nutrition plan. So, the
Hmm.
maximum definition diet, he talks about all types of meats in that diet, but he does like beef because he had a lot of personal experience using beef. So that's why he liked it. Because it was good. It was a good experience.
Right.
Then also you have the Wild Physique. They have different diets in there, and it talks about the different types of meats and what you need to be aware of. And the Pro Series of Nutritional Bodybuilding. That's another great document that can give you a lot of good insight on how to approach things for good maximal results. So I think those are good resources. Obviously you can look up other things on the internet. Just when you do that, kind of filter through that information. Don't assume just because that's what you read, that's 100% accurate.
Right.
Because
Right.
what I'll typically do is read 2 or 3 articles, and I'm looking for a consistent theme of the 3 articles. Then I know that's probably pretty accurate because the rest of them they have different angles they're taken on the article.
Hmm. Well, Armin, as usual, great information and another great show. A lot of great content today. Um, that being said, if you like this show, we appreciate you watching or listening to it on the podcast. We'll be expanding here very soon, in the podcast world. You'll be hearing us on iHeart and Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're working on that, and that'll be coming out very soon. But all the links to be able to watch or hear the show are just about everywhere, and we're going to be having them on the NSP Nutrition site here very soon as well. If you have questions for the show, any feedback or comments, of course, on the YouTube side, it's easy. Just leave a comment or a question there.
Sure.
Or if you want to shoot an email to NSP and they'll get it to us, you can send it to support@nspnutrition.com, and they'll make sure that we get the question for the show. And, you know, Arman, in regards to content, we appreciate the folks that are listening or watching the show. You know, a lot of the content you come up with for the show is because of the people that are engaged with the show, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, we're looking for all kinds of different things people want to have help with, and we do the research and, you know, give some different viewpoints to it. And that way you can decide if it's something that makes sense for you to do.
All right. And everybody, don't forget to check out nspnutrition.com. A lot of new stuff in the store. You know, like I said, the hoodies, your digestive enzymes are there. Or if you want to take a look at the 21-day challenge, that is there as well. And that's it for the show today. Thanks for joining Arman and I. And check back next week for another new episode of the NSP Nutrition Show.
Hey, thanks for checking out the NSP Show. Go to nspnutrition.com where you can find a whole heap of resources to help you achieve stunning definition and eye-popping levels of muscularity. Don't forget you can save 10% on your first order by using the code NSP Show at the checkout. Catch you next time.